All right, check this out. So there's a few things happening here. We have some sort of weird mixed blend mode occurring where we can see these little individual containers beneath them, and it's sort of like a glass effect. And we also have this hover and perspective thing occurring as well. So that's what I'm going to show you how to build today using HTML and CSS. I sort of saw kind of like an After Effects version of this from a user on Dribbble. I thought, okay, that'd be cool to recreate an actual HTML and CSS and show everybody how to do it. So today I'm starting something new. With each new video, I want user feedback. I'm going to pose a question. So what I'm interested in knowing among my channel subscribers and those of you who hopefully will subscribe at least after this video because you love it so much is, which do you prefer when you're creating user interface designs? Sketch or Adobe Experience Design XD? So let me know which one, and within maybe 1 or 2 sentences, tell me why. All right, so let's go ahead and get started. And once again, make sure you subscribe, leave a comment and a like, and let's go. All right, so you can go ahead and create a new folder in your console or wherever you prefer to create folders on your operating system. I'm just gonna make it in my code folder, and we'll just do make dir, and I'll just call this LP for landing page, and we'll CD into LP. All right, so then I'm just gonna launch the code editor, which I'm using Visual Studio Code. No, I don't wanna upgrade at the moment. And let's create an index.html file, a main.css file, also a folder called images, which we're going to put 3 SVG based cryptocurrency icons or logos in there in a bit. And then in here, let's just put exclamation point for some quick boilerplate, Control B to get rid of that sidebar. And then we're just going to type link, enter, and then the href will be main.css, and we're all good to go. All right, so now I'm just going to write out some HTML first. So by default, I'm going to have a background here, kind of like a background based, kind of like a cutout as I showed you before. So div class equals BG, and I'm going to hit Shift Alt and the down arrow key to replicate that line. And we're also going to have a second one. And then we're just going to have a typical container class. And by the way, I'm not using any type of CSS framework for this. It's all going to be custom CSS here. And then we're going to have a div ID of left and then also right. All right. So in left, we're just going to have a simple H1 with cryptocurrencies. And then we're going to have a paragraph. And I'm just going to type lorem and enter. All right, we'll save that. And then for the right section, we're going to structure those 3 blips that we're going to be transforming and animating within an unordered list. So UL, LI, and then we're going to have an image source equals images / logo dot, no, sorry. It's going to be appcoins.svg. It's one of the cryptocurrencies that exist. We're also going to have a span to contain a strong element for the name of the cryptocurrency. And then also we'll have a paragraph element with lorem again, except we don't need this much type. I'm just going to get that first sentence right there. All right, so then I'll just take this, copy this list item, paste it again. The second one we have is called Ethos. You can use, any cryptocurrency if you want. And then iota. So we'll just type Ethos and iota here. All right, so that's it for the HTML. Very simple, as you can see. So if I hit Control B, all right, so right click and open with live server there. All right, so this is the very ugly page that we have at the moment. So let's go ahead and head over to our main CSS file. Control B to get rid of that sidebar. And we'll just start with just some quick rule sets here. So let me hit Control plus real quick so we can see this even larger. So our body and HTML tag, we want to set the height to 100%. Otherwise, we're going to have scroll bars when we set up the CSS grid. And then we'll also put margin 0 to get rid of the default padding added by the browsers. And then body specifically, we're going to put in a font family of Montserrat. It's the one I always use. It's already installed on my system, so I don't have to import it. If you don't have it installed, it's a Google web font, so just go to google.com/fonts for that. And then we're going to make this a grid container, the body itself. We're going to have several grid containers just to make the process of building the layout easy. All right, so grid template columns, we're going to set to just one, and it's going to be auto. And then also grid template rows, the same thing. Now, by the way, if you're unfamiliar with any of these rule sets as it pertains to this grid template stuff and the display grid, I do have a bunch of tutorials on my channel. So search for CSS grid and you'll be able to find it. All right, so also we're going to reference our BG elements, so BG and BG2, and that's going to be a width of 100%, height 100%, and position absolute. And then we're going to reference specifically down here our initial BG, which is going to be, real quickly, we're going to put Z index, and that's simply going to be -1 to start, because there's going to be 2 layers here. And then we'll have a background color. Now I already have a color code picked out, so I'm just going to copy that color code right there. So it's 226 dBc. And then I'm also going to use the clip path property to build out this this shape for the background that I want. So I already have that. It's basically just a clip path property with a vendor prefix of WebKit, and it's the same thing right here. So where did I get these values? Well, very simply, there's a generator, and there we go. The generator, it's called it's called Clippy. So just go to Google and type Clippy, clip path, and you'll get this URL here. And so it basically just helps you real quickly build out a shape, and the result is down here, and it's automatically highlighted. So just hit Control C, and then you build out. If you want more than just 4 points, for instance, you can click any of these. You can have a star even. Just lets you build out a cool custom shape. All right. So this is kind of what I already had set up. So if you just want to recreate that, that's fine. So let's go. As we can see, here it is. I already saved it. All right. So also we have our BG2. So let's reference that, BG2. And same thing, Z index this time is going to be -2. And then also a different background color, just slightly different. And that color code is just slightly darker than that blue. You can barely even tell through here. And then this as well, I slightly adjusted the clip path using Clippy so that, well, I'll just show you the result. I'm going to copy or paste that right here. Now if we go back, you could see it's just ever so slightly changed here a little bit. It just gives you a nice effect, essentially, kind of like a multi-layered background. All right, so continuing on, let's work on the actual container that contains most of our content. So container, we're going to make this a grid because we have 2 columns. So the grid template columns property will be 50% and just auto, or 50% will work too. And then height will be auto. And align self, we're going to center it, so it'll center. And then margin 0, 50 pixels to give ourselves some padding on the right and left. All right, so as we save this, we can now see it's aligned on the vertical axis with align self. All right, starting to get there. All right, so now let's work on the unordered list, which is where the bulk of everything we're working on resides. So we don't want list style type. We don't want those stupid bullets. So none. And then also perspective. I never really worked with perspective before, but you could place the perspective property on a parent container, and then any of the child elements inside of it will have a perspective applied to it based on the properties that you give those child elements. So we'll see how this works shortly. For our list item, There's quite a few properties here for this one. So first, we're going to make this a display grid in and of itself, and then also grid template columns, because the grid template columns of this one is the SVG logo and then the stuff to the right of it contained within that span element. All right, so we'll have 20% for the width of that SVG icon, and then auto, or whatever is remaining left over, for that second column. Now we're going to have a border radius at 10 pixels just to round out the borders. We're also going to have a padding of 15 pixels so that there's the content inside of the container isn't up against a wall. Cursor, we're going to change that to a pointer because these are going to be hoverable. And then also transform. We're going to, this is where the perspective comes into play. So this is the parent element's necessary property for this effect, and then the child element right down here will be the transform property. So we're going to rotate on the y-axis -30 degrees, and then rotate on the x-axis 15 degrees. All right, we're not done yet though. I'm going to position absolute these so that we can kind of sit them on top of each other slightly. And then also border bottom, and this isn't necessary, this is just aesthetic stuff. I thought it looked cool to having a slight border at the bottom, and it'll just make it appear like a thick piece of glass or something like that, especially when we add the blend mode coming up here. So border bottom, 4 pixels solid. We'll do RGBA, and that way we could put 0, 0, 0 for black, and then also the opacity of maybe 20% at 0.2. So let's save this at this point and see what things look like. Yeah, not very good, and that's because we have to reference each one of these individually with the nth selector, so nth child selector. So let's go ahead and we'll add mixed blend mode after this. I'm just going to leave that space right there. So now we're going to put ULI nth child, and so we'll take the first one, and there's only 3 properties for this one. So background, we're going to give it its own unique color. A very light blue, I believe, is what I had by default, and that's this color code right there. So if you click on this, you'll see where I'm at specifically. And then also we'll do a top. We're going to say -105 pixels, and that's, I only got through that that amount simply through trial and error. So just saving and picking an initial value and going from there. Z index, we want this to be on the very top of the stack, so we'll put 2 because it starts out with 0, 1, 2, and we have 3 of these list items. All right, let's just copy this and then paste that twice. So we'll change this. This is going to be 2, 3, and then right here we have a slightly different hue. It's quite desaturated in light though. That's what they all share, the same kind of property in terms of colors and saturation and lightness. All right, but it is different in terms of the hue. This one top, we don't have to add it. It's just going to be where it's default because it's in the middle position. And then this one will have a different color here. So if I hover over this, it's kind of in the purple spectrum. Now this one is going to be a positive 105 pixels, and the Z index of the third one is just, we're going to leave that off actually, yeah. So Z index 2, this one's going to be 1, and this one we're leaving off. By default it'll be 0. All right, so let's save and see what happens now. There we go. So these broken images, they look like crap. Let's go ahead, and where I got these cryptocurrency logos is from worldvectorlogo.com. Just has a ton of different logos, even for cryptocurrencies. So if I type in AppCoins, this is the one I used. You click on it, download SVG, it'll download it, and then as you can see, I already downloaded down there. And then just open in folder and then just drag out appcoins.svg to your images folder that we created. All right, so I'm going to do that real quickly and just pause the video. Okay, so now if we go back to our document, oh no, doesn't really work too well. And that's because we have to add a rule set to control the size of those SVGs. So we're using an image tag for that. So image, We'll just put width. We'll make them all a standard 70 pixels. And there we go. Much better. All right, so this is cool, but we haven't yet worked in any type of animations to really show this cool perspective effect when you're hovering over them. So let's also real quick before we do that, do the blend mode, which is really cool. It kind of creates like a glassy effect. So up here on our list item element, we're going to add a mix blend mode property. Now, if you haven't heard of some of these properties, be it CSS grid or the display grid property, or this mixed blend mode, and you're kind of confused, or you're not certain about, how, which browsers are going to be able to use them, which versions, go to caniuse.com and just type the property in there, and it'll let you know. Mixed blend mode, for instance, I'm kind of curious. I'm gonna type that in real quick. So can I use, and we'll type in mixed blend mode. So currently the global usage, which is probably the most important, is 86.77%. So this will work on 86.77% of users' browsers down here. All right, so let's go back here, and we're just going to add multiply. So similar to the blend modes that you see in Photoshop, for instance, you're able to use a lot of the same ones. If you're interested in experimenting with these values, the possible values, just go to Google and type mixed blend mode CSS, and you'll see all the properties listed out on one of the results. So going back, now we could see the background of the other one that they're laid on top of, which is, I don't know, I think it's kind of cool. So you can also even experiment with adding shadows to this as well. I tried it. I didn't really like the result. It kind of got a little bit too cluttered. So now what's left is the hover. All right. So this is where some of the animation magic occurs. When we add UL, LI, and hover, we're going to add a transform. So when it's hovered over, the given list item element will transform. And we're going to change the rotate Y property negative 22 degrees. And by default, they're all set at negative 30 degrees. So I'm not changing it much. And this is something you'll want to experiment with, obviously, as I did. I tried changing it way too much, and it looked ridiculous. We'll also do a rotate X to 7 degrees. And we'll scale it up slightly to 1.03. So the default is 1. We're only going 0.03. All right, so let's do that. Let's save that and see what happens now. All right, kind of cool, but it looks a little strange for a few different reasons. There's no actual animation taking place, like a transition. And also, if it's really on top, you shouldn't see this one right here. So we can fix that through a couple properties here. So let's make it animate first, though, before we do that. So transition, we'll say transform. And so what are we going to transition, or what are we going to animate? We're going to animate the transform property. All right, so transform 4 seconds, 0.4 seconds rather, and we're going to add ease out. So what this is going to say is by default, the transform property is set up here, all right, at negative 30 and rotate X 15, and then we're changing it on this one to something different. And we're going to just simply create a transition between those two, and that's what that property does. So, so now if we go here, there we go. Now let's fix the other issue with the layer stack or the order. All we have to do is just change this here to z-index 3, and then this isn't going to completely fix a problem, because now what we need to do is add one more, and that will be mix blend mode. We're going to change it back to normal for the one that's currently on top. Ta-da! I don't know. I think that's pretty cool. So let's fix this over here slightly. I had a slightly larger, but that's pretty much the bulk of the tutorial, but I'm a little bit anal on this. So let's change the font size to 3EM, margin top 0, and also yeah, one more rule set here. We'll say the paragraph inside of the left container, we're just going to make it like a gray, maybe a little bit darker. There we go. And then finally, we'll separate the line height a little bit, so 1.5 EM. Save it, and There we go. And what's really cool about this perspective property, if I scale this down, I have my browser zoomed in at about 100% or 125%. The actual perspective changes based on, you can't really tell, but that perspective property makes the actual elements inside of it change perspective based on the viewport width, which is pretty cool. All right, so hopefully you enjoyed that. There's a lot of different properties. Maybe some of you have never tried before, whether it be the CSS grid or transitions or that perspective property. That was relatively new to me as well. And so hopefully you learned a lot. All right, so make sure you leave a comment here and subscribe. Check out Coursettra.com, and I'll see you real soon.